Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yannick Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On today's episode, our guest is Mahesh Ram. Mahesh is a serial founder and entrepreneur, and he's currently the founding CEO of Solvi, a leading SaaS provider of conversational self-service and automation solutions to leading global companies with over 550 million end users. Prior to Solvi, he was the CEO of GlobalEnglish, which pioneered online business English education for learners in over 120 countries. GlobalEnglish was later acquired by the Pearson PLC. He previously held CTO roles at Thomson Reuters. So without further delay, sit back, plug your earphones in, and let's jump right into this conversation with Mahesh. Mahesh, welcome.
Thank you so much, Yannick. I'm incredibly excited to be on with you.
Okay. So I know we read your bio, and, it's the formal summary of how you got to where you are today. But we always like to ask our guests in their own words. Could you just tell us a little bit about your journey, how it is that you ended up in this world of customer experience automation?
Well, I think the whole area of customer experience is one that's always fascinated me. I think my entire career has been about automating complexity, and by taking very complex things and turning them into easier, better, more frictionless experiences. And that's been true for whether that's in online education or legal and tax compliance. But when I think about customer experience, it's the thing that impacts every single one of us. All of us have great experiences we can talk about with brands, and we have those very poor experiences we talk about with brands. And we make decisions based on those things. And I'm no different than everybody else, than our customers. Mm-hmm. And so when I saw the potential for the technology to truly deliver a better experience at scale, I was hooked. I think, when I saw the incredibly powerful PhD work that my co-founders had done that enabled the ability to deliver this incredible customer experience at scale, I just couldn't resist, because as a CEO, I've often seen that we're just not good enough at this. So that's what motivated me, and that's what excites me about what we're doing.
All right. So could you tell us a little bit about Solvi? I know you mentioned in your bio that you are currently at Solvi, and Solvi is about CX automated platforms and basically powering customer experiences just in real world terms. So our listeners that are listening, whether they are managers or business owners of small or medium businesses, they can get a better understanding of how what you do could possibly influence what they do to enhance frictionless experiences for their customers.
So I think, there's a famous book called The Effortless Experience that I think describes very nicely what we're trying to do. But at Solvi, we built a powerful SaaS platform. It's a solution that takes machine learning and natural language processing, natural language understanding at its core, but delivers an end user or consumer experience that allows every one of us as consumers to interact with a brand in a way that sometimes to get self-service automation, sometimes other times get the right journey, be able to get to the right agent at the right time. But the way we like to think about it is allowing any brand in the world at scale to deliver what we think of as like concierge level journeys. Imagine if the system understood you. It knows what you want. You just talk to it and it tells you where you need to go. Sometimes it provides you an immediate answer. Other times it has to ask you some follow-up questions because it needs a little more information from you in order to pinpoint either the right answer or get you to the right agent. And you can imagine how this can be scaled across a global footprint, across the world. We work with our customers, are B2B and B2C companies that have hundreds of millions of end users. So we're serving two customers, if you will. We're serving the companies that buy and implement us, but ultimately our end customer is their consumer, their end user. And can we deliver an intelligent solution? Sometimes it's in the form of a chatbot. Other times it's in the form of taking them on a journey and taking them to the right agent. But that's what we do. We made it really simple to implement something that's very complex under the hood, but it's very simple for companies to implement, and it delivers an immediate ROI to the business and better experience for the user.
Yeah. Okay. Does your company primarily work with a particular type of industry, like retail, or is it more service-based kind of organizations? Could you give an example of maybe one of your clients that has seen success as a result of this approach?
Sure. First of all, we work with across a wide number of verticals, both B2B and B2C. But I would say some of our our strongest verticals are things like e-commerce. Not so much pure physical retail, but oftentimes the e-commerce arm of a retail business, fintech, so consumer fintech and banking. A good example would be a consumer finance banking application, Stash, which many people have used. Millions of users use them. We work with brands like Ring, the home doorbell, home alarm, home security company, which is now part of Amazon. These are some of the companies. So it's a wide spectrum of companies, but typically it's a situation where I, as an end user of a product or service, have adopted that product or service, but have questions about how to get the most out of it. So and sometimes that can be simple, right? That can be I'm an e-commerce customer, and I've ordered something and I want to cancel something, or I want to see where it is. I'm wondering why there's a delay. Other times it might be something like I bought a device and I don't know how to make it work with my iPhone. We've all had that experience. And in both those situations, Solvi can understand the issue as expressed by the user in everyday natural language, and then be able to connect the user to the right solution. That could be a stepwise guided answer. It could be, in some cases, collecting more information and giving it to the agent, who can then help you 3 to 10 times faster than they could have. So those are some examples of companies we work with. That it's a pretty broad spectrum. We even work in healthcare. We work with Calm, which is one of the leading meditation apps. Many of your users, entrepreneurs, may be using that to find to do meditation and peace of mind. Wonderful application. We support their end users. So it ranges across a wide range of industries.
Amazing. All right. So a big part of artificial intelligence is natural language processing. And I know for the average person, that may sound like really high level. Could you just break down what that really is to our listeners so that they can understand and maybe even get a better connection with maybe how this could work in their business?
Absolutely. So the way to think about to simplify the complex, obviously natural language processing is a deep science, and there's tens of thousands of research papers and PhD thesis on this. But I'll simplify it, because I think at the end of the day, as consumers, it boils down to one thing: is the ability to understand in the customer experience space. It's the ability to understand when a user expresses an issue or what we think of as an intent. So, you might say, I bought the jeans last week. They don't fit me. Please help. And if you have enough data about prior examples of that, you can quickly learn, the machine learning can actually learn that the natural language expression in that case is likely a call to say, hey, can I return or exchange this, right? Nowhere is the word return or exchange used. So I think natural language understanding in context of customer experience is about understanding how people in that business or in that problem area express issues. They often don't use the words that the companies use. They may not use the word return or exchange. They say, I want to give this back. So NLU is the technology that allows you to move away from that kind of keyword dependency and understand the core intent of what the user is doing. And the way you do that is you actually train on the prior data, because chances are most businesses have had thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people asking similar questions before. And the machine learning can actually learn how real users express real issues and start to get better at detecting that as soon as they finish typing something in or speaking something. And we're all familiar with Alexa, and it has a specific set of natural language understanding where you can ask what's the weather, and it's been trained to understand those words. Is it going to rain today? And it knows to answer you with an answer and tell you to take an umbrella. So that's an example of NLU that most people would understand. But in the context of customer experience, it's very much about understanding that business's specific natural language.
All right. So let's say we have some listeners who their business, let me give you an example. Let's say, for example, it is a pastry business, and she or he may have an outlet where customers can come and pick up, little pastries like cupcakes or a slice of bread pudding or whatever the case is, and they're really looking to try and find a way to have more automation in their business. What's maybe one or two things that you think they could start off doing if they're at ground zero? They have no automation. Where can they start to try to get their business on level one of trying to, get automated and have their customers come on board?
Well, I think the first thing is, I think if you think about foundational principles, it's first of all, let's make sure that we collect all that information in a place where it can be, make sure that you answer it, that you keep track of it, that you have some history of what's happened with that user. And so typically that's, you would use some sort of a simple support CRM business. We partner with companies like Zendesk, Freshdesk, and others, and those are pretty simple to implement. They don't really require a lot of deep technology to implement a simple implementation, and that allows you to then say, okay, Yannick called me on Tuesday asking about the status of her pastry order, and I need to get back to her. It keeps track of it, and if you come back a week later, I might know that you asked about this last week, and so I might start my conversation with you by saying, is this about the pastry order you placed last week, right? So I have some context. So I think first thing is to put a simple system in place that does it. And there's lightweight systems, there's inexpensive systems. They don't cost a lot of money, and typically you can scale up or down depending on how many resources you have. So that's, I think, first things first. Second thing is, I think a lot of businesses would just benefit from writing some simple content and other things on their websites to be able to answer the most frequently asked questions. So pay attention to once you're starting to track what people are asking, you should then be able to go back and say, let me write an article about how do I customize a cake? Or how do I, if I order, a bulk order of pastries, do I get a discount, right? These might be common questions that you see in the data, that you see this is coming up over and over. So that would be like a starting point, right? You'd start with some sort of a knowledge base so people can find the answer for themselves. Because most people don't want to wait for your team, especially if you have a small team. It might take 24 hours for you to answer that question about a bulk order. Well, you might have lost the order by that time.
True.
Right? So you're better off letting the customer get the help they need. And that goes to the third thing, which is then the third thing is, we work with Open Table. You're familiar with Open Table. People make reservations, at any restaurant, hundreds of thousands of restaurants around the world. And they serve two audiences, right? Me as a consumer wants to book a table at a fancy restaurant, perhaps in San Francisco, but also the restaurant owner who has to then control some of those back-end tools. And they provide a whole range of tools. But imagine an experience where that restaurant owner can interact with technology to be able to change their hours or modify, frequently asked questions. So, that's where we often come in, is that we end up giving brands a way to automate even more complex things. So if you say, hey, I want to customize my cake, the natural language understanding can actually understand that and say, or maybe you don't say customize, you say, I want to order a special cake for my niece, and I wanted to say something very unique. Like I say something like that. And nowhere do I use the word customize. I could come up to you and say, great, looks like you want to customize the cake. We have these options for you. Which one do you want? And take you down the path and actually collect all that information and say, I've got everything I need. Somebody will get back to you within an hour with an ETA on when this cake will be ready for you. Does that make sense? And imagine that experience in 35, 40 seconds. I might have actually gotten your order right. And I've still handed it off to a human being because somebody still has to bake the cake. But at that point, I am such a delighted consumer. Maybe I order a little extra. Maybe at that point you present me with an offer and say, if you want to order a dozen cookies for the other guests, there's a special offer, 10% off right now. So I think if you think about automation, it's not about putting a blocker in front of the user. It's about automating things that otherwise they'd have to wait too long for.
Very good. Excellent. All right. Okay. So, Mahesh, could you share with us what is the one online resource, tool, website, or app that you absolutely can't live without in your business?
So I think, that's a great question. I think for us, the tool that ends up being, because we've gone completely virtual, right, due to the pandemic. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody is virtual. So I think it would be tempting to say, an online meeting tool like a Zoom, but I actually think that the most indispensable tool is probably something like Slack,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a communication vehicle for everyone to share information and ideas. And what we've done, which is nice with Slack, is we've used some of the third-party bots and applications inside Slack to do things like give praise to someone. It makes it easy to give praise, and it shows up in Slack. Everyone can read it. It also then writes it automatically to the performance management system. So it's a great way to motivate your employees or help people motivate one another for great work. Hey, Yannick did a great job today on this. She made it possible for me to help this customer, rather than having you, it makes it easy. You just go into Slack and give her praise. That's one example, right? You can share documents. You can even do video calls in Slack. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a pretty powerful tool. I'm sure other people use other things like it, but that's one that I would say is been very, very crucial for us.
All right. Okay. Could you also share with us maybe one or two books that have had really great impact on you? It could be a book that you read recently, or even one that you read a very long time ago, but it still has a great impact on you.
Sure. I think one book is very personal. My grandfather was lived in India, grew up in India. He had spent most of his career, in the public service, and then but he was very interested in music. And after the age of about 60, he decided to become a music and dance critic, and he started writing and actually became a well-known critic and musicologist in one of the major newspapers of India. And at the age of 88, my grandfather decided to write a book.
Mm.
He wrote a book on music and musicians, and just his recollections, his opinions, and it turned out to be a really, really well received book and got a lot of critical praise at the age of 88. And I think that, to me, it was less about the book and more about the fact that his lifelong passion for learning had never stopped, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, it's as much the book as the writing of the book as the book itself. It's both those. It's both. So that was one. The second one, which I think has become more and more relevant, is a book I've probably reread 3 times. It's a 3-volume, very heavy, long trilogy called Parting the Waters, written by a man named Taylor Branch, and it's about it's kind of the entire lifespan of Martin Luther King, and it's probably about 2,000 pages total. So it's not light reading, but it talks about all of the ups and downs of the civil rights movement, the great triumphs, and then of course later in his life some of his regrets and so on and so on. And it's and I think it really comes home when you think about the events of the last couple of years and what's going on in the world. You realize that these struggles, the great struggles, don't have easy answers, and they don't find solutions. Don't just emerge and everything is great. Things have a way of taking far longer and being much more difficult than ever, than you ever imagined when you started. Ideals are what carry you through, but even there's a lot of frustration you have to overcome, whether that's true in business or in social life, in social good or anything. So those are two. And then for fun, I think one that I always like reading is Calvin and Hobbes, the cartoon strip, because I just think it's just fun. It just reminds you that at the end of the day, we all take ourselves way
too seriously, right? That's so true. And life is so short. We really have to enjoy laughter.
Yep, exactly.
All right. Okay, Mahesh, could you also share with us what's one thing that's going on in your life right now that you're really excited about? It could be something that you're working on to develop yourself or your people.
Sure. To think about that for a moment, but I think we're working on so many incredibly exciting things in the business. So I'll choose one or two that I think excite me the most. The first thing is what I call the omnichannel experience. Take your example of the pastry shop, right? I think we're just now entering in the United States the notion of a truly omnichannel experience where businesses have to meet consumers where they live. It's no longer reasonable to expect customers to come to your website, right? They might choose to they live in Instagram. they live in Snapchat, they live in WhatsApp. And this has already happened in other markets. Like in China, you have WeChat. In India, WhatsApp is very, very strong. And if I want to order a pizza from Domino's in India, I'm just as likely to use WhatsApp as I am to go to Domino's.com, right? But in North America, that's just now happening. It's just happening where brands are creating really strong presence. But the problem is there isn't one thing. It isn't like I can just build for WhatsApp, right? On a Monday, I might choose to interact with the pastry shop you mentioned on Facebook Messenger. On Tuesday, I might want to go into WhatsApp and place an order for a cake. On Wednesday, I might go to the store brand, to the website, and try to order it, right? And it could change. If two users might have two different things. So brands have to be in all these places. But I can't have different things going on in those sites. If I ask you what's the price to customize a cake, and you give me three different answers on three different channels, that's a real problem, right? Consumers get really annoyed. So I think what we're doing at Solvi, which is really exciting, is we're making it possible for businesses to build the intelligent layer once in the platform and then deliver it on any of these channels they choose with the same consistency. So if you come in on a Monday and say, I want to return these shoes that I bought on Facebook Messenger, we'll take you through that entire experience and get it returned and connect you to an agent. But on Wednesday, if you come back and ask, where's my order on the company's website, we'll be able to answer that question just as accurately on the thing. So the consistency across platforms. So it's consistent and personalized. So it knows enough to ask Yannick for her email address and look it up and tell you exactly where your order is. That kind of personalization automated is critical. And then I think that goes to the second piece, which is what excites me more than anything is the ability to deliver a truly personalized experience. I mean, think about yourself or anybody in the audience. When you buy a product or service, the experience you have in the first week, maybe the first 10 days, maybe the first 30 days if it's a piece of software is so crucial, right? How well you use it, how well you get acclimated to it determines how happy you are with it. So we think at Solvi, how do we enable brands to be able to deliver that kind of support on onboarding and guidance to, say, a first 30-day user that's different than for a user who's been with the brand for 6 to 12 months, and do that at scale, like do that for millions of people. So if a good example would be, we work with a very large meal kit delivery service. They deliver meals to your home, and I can deliver a different experience for someone who's ordering their very first meal. That's a little bit more hand-holding, a little bit more like, hey, did everything come as you expected? Because they're not used to some of the things about unpacking the ice and doing these things. But if somebody's ordered 12 meals from me in the last 2 months, I probably don't want to waste their time asking them if they know how to unpack the ice. I want to ask them if they're looking for new recipes, right? So the ability to do that at a massive scale, because you can't do that one by one with but technology allows you to say, I'm going to do that for everybody who's the first 30-day user is going to get this experience. And then, so those are the kinds of things. So I think personalization and omnichannel are the two things that I think really, really excites me about the business.
Yeah. Two things came to mind when you were speaking just now. So the first thing you mentioned was omnichannel. And I personally, as a customer, I'm trying to wonder if there's no technology out there that, let's say, for example, utilities is something we all have to pay every month, right? Let's say our electricity bills. Yep. And you may talk to your electricity company. You may not talk to them very often, but there are times when you do have to interface with them. So let's say, for example, you reach out to them on Twitter Messenger because there was a power outage in your area. And, they communicated and said, okay, they've sent their engineers to sort it out. And, we should get service restored within X amount of time. And then 4 months later, you may need to contact them because you're trying to pay a bill. You're trying to use their platform to pay the bill, but you're having some challenges. And when you call them on the phone, you can't get them. It would be good to know that they're able to connect those experiences. So they would say to you, oh, hi, Miss Grant. We haven't heard from you in 4 months. How have things been? Because then it shows that they're paying attention to the last time someone was in contact with you, even if it wasn't the same agent that you dealt with 4 months ago. Is that possible?
Oh, it's not only possible, we're doing that all the time. I think there's kind of a divide in the middle, which is whether I know who you are or I don't, right? Oftentimes, if you're going to an e-commerce site, you go to Nike.com, you're probably not identifying yourself, and you may not want to identify yourself. You may not want them to know that it's Yannick. But if you have an existing relationship with the brand, you still might come to the website of the utility company and not identify yourself. But based on the type of question you're asking, we might say, in order to help you, you'll have to identify yourself. But I
Right.
don't want to give that to you until I realize you need that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I might say, can you please tell me the email address, or can you log in? And then based on the login, now I can come back and say, looks like you came in last week and asked this question. Are you asking about the same thing? And if you say no, then I can pop up and give you the more generic menus and say, hey, would you like to be able to do it? So not only is it possible, we're doing it all the time with brands where we're personalizing the experience. This goes back to my notion of personalization, is that it can it can understand prior interaction data and ask you if that's the case. Sometimes that can be intrusive, right? You may not care about something 4 months ago. It's not that. But if you've called 3 times in the last week, chances are it's about the same issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, what I need to do is 2 things. One is I need to make sure that every single thing that you told me on the first call or the first technology interaction with Solvi, for example, has been recorded properly to the agent, so that the next agent who picks it up, your second call a week later, has everything in front of them. And that's the key. The key is not to make you repeat yourself. If I had to say one, it's not make you repeat yourself, right? And that's what technology enables. I mean, I'll give you one example, and I'll close with this. And I mean, you can ask me follow-ups, but in the example with the meal kit, is if you come in and say, hey, help, my steak is spoiled, I'm really angry. Well, first of all, you're probably pretty upset because your dinner just got ruined.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a good experience. You might stop using the brand. But if I immediately pop up and say, I'm sorry to hear you have a missing or spoiled ingredient, can you just give me the information, and it pops up your meal and says, which of the ingredients is missing? Tell me or spoiled. Tell me what's wrong with it. And immediately I say, I've issued a credit back to your account. And then you can still talk to the agent if you want to complain more. That's a really good experience. It doesn't prevent you from, unfortunately, it doesn't feed you your meal that night, but it does make you feel like the brand is there for you and really cares about doing something right. They can make an offer and give you 2 free meals or whatever it might be, right? But again, even if I passed you to an agent in that case, the agent knows that you called because your steak was spoiled, the ice had melted, that you were expecting to get it, with 2 side dishes and you only got 1. And they start the conversation with you knowing all of this. So they're not asking you to repeat any of this. That's what we do.
Brilliant, brilliant. It's funny you mentioned the meal delivery service for home, because I started using one recently, and I find the young lady's service to be so poor. When you call her, she doesn't return your phone calls. When you send her a message on WhatsApp, she takes forever to respond. She sends out her menus the week before, like on a Friday, and then you indicate to her how many days for the week you wanted meals and which items you were interested in. And I think for last week, I told her I was interested in a meal for Thursday. The meal wasn't delivered. I tried to call her on Thursday afternoon to ask her, weren't you supposed to deliver the meal today? She hasn't responded to my WhatsApp. I called her twice. She hasn't responded to my call. Frankly, I don't think I'm going to order from her again, because I think it's either she's taken on more than she can chew, or she's clearly not ready for this level of business. Because if you're dealing with people and you're delivering meals to them and they've indicated to you what they want and when they want it, if you can't manage the communication portion, then maybe you need to outsource that for the business.
I think that's a brilliant point. I think that oftentimes people take on more than they can handle. But they lose sight of the customer. I think it goes back to the customer. Like, how often does she talk to you and ascertain how well you like the service? Like, does she check in with you? Does she have a survey? Because if she loses you, the thing she probably doesn't grasp yet, and I think some small business owners don't always grasp this, is how expensive it is to acquire a customer. To get Yannick to try it for the first time is a really hard thing. And so losing you is much worse than acquiring 2 new people, because they've already gone through the effort of convincing you and you've already done it. So I think this does speak to something that I think a lot of entrepreneurs can do better, which is to survey and get feedback from customers, because you may well be sympathetic to her if she was talking to you.
Yeah.
If she told you honestly, hey, look, I'm really struggling with this, but I'm really trying to make it work. I'm an entrepreneur and I want to make this work. I'm so sorry about your meal. Let me see what I can do. You were probably willing to give her the sun, the moon, and the stars to get it right, But if you don't hear from her, you just assume that she's she doesn't care.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking of deleting her number out of my phone because I don't think I want to do business with her anymore. Her
Yeah.
communication is extremely poor, and her food isn't. It's not amazing, but it's good and it's healthy. And it's a better choice than me having to go and have fast food for sure.
Sure.
But the challenge, as I said, is she needs to work out that aspect of it, or she's gonna lose more than one customer.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I would say that technology allows us to do with a lot of the brands is to be predictive. So if for example, Yannick is coming in frequently with questions about a certain kind of issue, we do something that we call category analytics for businesses, where we look at every single question that's ever been asked for their brand and we group them into big categories. And so we can tell the brand, the food kit company, that your missing ingredient issues have spiked 23% in the last 2 weeks. Something's up. We don't know what it is because we're not in their factory, right? We're not watching, but they can drill in and they can tap into that. They can double click on it and they can see all the actual expressions by the user. So they can and they can do keyword searches. They get to show me everything with the word ice in it. So if the ice is melting, maybe they go back to the warehouse people and say, we need to package the ice better, right? So those are the kinds of insights that businesses often lack, and it's very difficult to do because technology allows you to do it without having to have a human being look at every single issue, right?
Yeah.
It automatically categorizes all the questions.
Amazing. All right, Ramesh. So can you tell our listeners where they can find you online? They would have listened to this episode. They're quite intrigued with what Solvi is doing. They're quite intrigued about your journey, and they'd like to connect with you further. Where can they find you online?
So the easiest way, as I would say, is our website is www.solvvy.com. That's SOLV as in victory, V as in victory, Y, solvvy.com. That's a website where you can find a lot of information about our business and about the technology and the products. Certainly you can find me on LinkedIn. It's Mahesh, Mahesh, Ram, Ram. You'll see me. There's probably other people with the same name, but the only one that's the founding CEO at Solvi, so you'll see me there. And of course, I'm also on all the social. I'm on Twitter as well. If you want to find me, we have a Twitter handle at Solvi Inc. Inc. That you can also find us there, and of course my name also, you can find me there as well. But it's at solvyinc.com. So SOLVVYINC at Twitter.
Amazing. All right. Now, before we wrap our interviews up, we always like to ask our guests, do you have a quote or a saying that during times of adversity or challenge, you'll tend to revert to this quote because it kind of helps to get you back on track or just get you back going, if you get derailed for any reason? Do you have one of those?
Yeah, I actually have a bunch of them, but the one that recently came up, I was reading the book by a very famous Roman emperor philosopher, Marcus Aurelius. He had written a book, 2,000 years ago, so it's a long time, but he said, but everything in there is so timeless because he really does a lot of reflection on his life. He said, the quote that he said, which I thought was really great, was, "Adapt yourself to the life you have been given and truly love the people with whom destiny has surrounded you."
Oh, wow.
And I thought that was just such a nice, simple way of saying, we're all given something and it's up to us to make the most of it. It's if you keep looking around for something better, then chances are you're never going to find it. And the people do too. So I thought that was a really nice quote.
Very nice. All right. So we will definitely have that quote in the show notes of this episode. Well, thank you so much, Ramesh, for taking time out of your very busy schedule to hop on this podcast with us and share all of these great insights and nuggets about your experiences, about the great things that Solvi is doing to improve automation and to just help businesses to really create that highest level of personalization and omnichannel experience that customers can really feel like they're doing business with organizations that are creating that frictionless experience. Because I know for sure as a customer, I want to do business with companies that make life easier for me, not more difficult. So it's great to know that you have organizations like yours that are out there that are helping to make that a reality for businesses across the globe.
Yannick, thank you so much for having me. I feel very honored to be on it. I love your podcast, and I think you're doing a great service for business owners all over the world. So thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated it.
You're most welcome. Okay, so just want to remind our listeners, please feel free to hop onto Facebook and join our private Facebook group, Navigating the Customer Experience Community. And feel free to follow us on Twitter at NavigatingCX. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant. We also have a new book available on Amazon, The ABCs of a Fantastic Customer Experience. It's available in ebook and paperback. So if you want to increase revenue in your organization, build a stronger service culture, and create employees or develop employees who are really mastering service delivery in your business, you need to grab a copy of this book. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant. Thank you so much for supporting our podcast. We have been busy securing conversations with some fantastic guests to bring you content that will help to revolutionize your business. We are taking a break for August 2021 and will resume on September 7, 2021. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email yannick@navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. Thank you again and be safe.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.